Hey guys, Cal here from Wild Success. Welcome to the Wildcast. I'm your host, Calvin Coyles, and on this episode, we're going to be looking at communication and all things talking, connecting, and relating to people. I'm pumped for it. If you have been enjoying our podcast, please make sure you give us a bit of a review online as well. If you haven't been enjoying the podcast, then just keep that shit to yourself. But otherwise, we're very excited for this episode, and I'm very excited to wrap up the big year and head into 2021. Jade, also known as @Jade, he has some questions for us.
Alrighty. So the first question from Marie.
Hey Marie.
Can you please go through any communication types, e.g. body language, tonality, or wording?
Yes, certainly. So you probably have heard this before, Marie. It's quite common. In terms of communication, how we communicate, obviously majority of that is non-verbal. Right? So when we think about the words that we use, it's often broken down that words are only about 7% of the things that we communicate. Body language is 55%, tonality is 38%. So effectively what that means is I'm very gestural, right? So I use my hands a lot. So we communicate a lot. If you've ever been to Italy before, you'll understand this, right? It's very easy to understand Italians, even if you don't speak Italian? Yeah, it's easy to understand Italians, even if you don't speak Italian. This is great for communication. I can't get the words out. However, the French are very difficult to understand. French are very nonchalant. They don't really use gesture. Italians, it's all the hands and the movements and the gestures as part of that as well, right? So effectively, when you're speaking to somebody, and this is particularly important in a digital age, you need to understand that we've all had the experience where you've received an email before. And you're like, fuck, is this person shouting at me? Is this person angry at me? You don't really understand the context or the subtext of the way that they communicate stuff. There's no room for sarcasm in a lot of language when it's printed on the page, unless it's really, really well written. Whereas if I say something to you in a sarcastic way, in my tonality, my body language, my facial expressions, I think there's close to 160 muscles in the human face that communicate and manipulate with the way that we communicate things as well. So it's important to understand the bigger picture. So effectively, to break it down for you, you've got majority of the way that you communicate. I think it's close to 93% is actually in the way that you communicate, not the words that you say. So this is why when someone says it's not what you said, it's the way you made me feel, or it's not what you said, it's the way that you said it, it has real impact. And my wife and I would say my wife and I communicate very well, considering how much time we spend together. However, the only issue she has with my communication is the words that I say are fine, but if I'm in an intense space, if I'm angry about something, or if I'm feeling frustrated, or if I'm hangry, or whatever, it's the way that I communicate those words that oftentimes I'll end up getting in trouble about. So just keep that in mind. It's important to understand. It's not what you say, it's the way you make people feel. And a great principle as part of this as well is to understand that ultimately you're responsible for your communication. And there's a great language, great sentence, which is that the meaning of the communication is the response it elicits. I'll repeat that because I know there's a lot in there. So the meaning of the communication is the response it elicits. What does that mean? It means that if I communicate something to you and you feel happy and uplifted, if that was my intention, well done. But if I was trying to make you feel happy and uplifted and instead you felt that I was being condescending and rude and obnoxious, well, it's not that you misinterpreted me, it's that I didn't communicate well. And if you have that mentality, you'll always do well. So when I'm communicating to my wife and I'm trying to let her know how much I love her, and instead she wants to punch me in the face because I've been irritating her all day. I think earlier today she says, don't make me smack you or don't make me belt you. That's quite a common thing. Anyway, I just wind her up. If I'm trying to be loving and supportive and instead she's getting pissed off, and ladies, I'm sure you've had those experiences with your partner as well, then I need to change the way that I communicate. At least that's what Ash tells me. That is the right next step.
Okay. All right, letting off some steam here. It's good. Brody would like to know,
Hey, Brody.
How do you build rapport effectively and timely?
Great question. So Brody, the first thing to understand is that you're building rapport naturally anyway. Inside of our nervous system, and particularly inside of our brain, there are neurons called mirror neurons. So what you'll find is that if you go into an environment where you're meeting new people, I'm a very fast talker, I'm a very loud talker as well. I take up a lot of the oxygen in the room, so to speak. But if I'm speaking to somebody that's very soft and measured and gentle, I'll probably punch that person. No, I'm only joking. So what will happen is they will naturally become a little bit more grandiose, and I'll naturally tone it down a little bit. Now, I don't do this deliberately, although I've been trained to do this deliberately, of course, but let's say I didn't know anything about rapport. What's important to understand is that when two people come together, providing that there's a bit of a connection there, what will happen is they will start to blend and mirror each other. And you'll see this in relationships, right? So if you've ever seen a couple before and they start to dress the same and look the same, they do it even without organizing their wardrobes, it's just because they start to mirror one another. And there's a deep survival mechanism that's part of this, because if I am like the people that I'm around, I'm less likely to be exiled. And if I'm less likely to be exiled, I've got more likely that I'm going to survive, because it's the sort of herd mentality. So it's important to know it happens naturally for you anyway. However, we have a whole heap of things in our lives, these things particularly, that take us out of connection and presence with people and take us to a whole nother world. And so if you're not present, your brain doesn't have the feedback mechanism to be able to then naturally mirror anyway. And so my biggest suggestion for rapport is just to be present to people. If you genuinely fucking listen, it's amazing how much you can learn about somebody. And, if you're asking the questions, you can control the conversation much clearer than if you're the one answering the questions. So I'm a big fan. When I meet new people, I always want to ask questions, because whoever controls the questions controls the conversation, but not in a controlling way. So you get to dictate the tempo of the conversation by doing that. It also gives you tremendous insight to understand how to build a deeper relationship with this person, because you have more information about who they are. So a couple of things tactically, though, as part of that. In rapport, there's a concept what's known as mirroring and matching. And this effectively means, for want of a better word, it's like copying body language. So for example, if I've got my arms crossed and we're having a conversation and you want to build rapport with me, you may also cross your arms as well, right? If, for example, I'm sitting and I've got my legs crossed, and you may want to cross your legs. If I'm standing and I'm slouching to one side, you might want to slouch to one side. If I'm leaning forward, you might lean forward. If I'm leaning back, you might lean back. Now, I want you to appreciate this distinction, because naturally people go, well, I don't want to copy people, I just want to be myself. I'm with you 100%. I don't want you to copy people either. What I want you to do, though, is to be in a position to best lead and influence, and I also want you to be in a position to build the greatest level of relationship. So, for example, when you go to a foreign country, and we're talking about communication here as well, so this is valuable. I'm from England originally, but when you go to a foreign country, you do the best to try and learn the local language. That's out of respect. It's like, I'm going to pay appropriate respect to your customs. I'm not going to just speak in a French accent when I go to France. Ideally, I'd rather try to learn some words in French, or at least learn the words of I don't know how to speak French in French, so I'm being respectful. That's the same approach we want to have here. It's not designed to mock, it's designed to show respect. And so when you're meeting somebody, they're saying, this is the way that I feel comfortable communicating. So to put them most at ease, to be able to create the greatest level of harmony, you would want to mirror that back. And so there's two ways to do it. You can match it, which effectively means that if I've got, if I've got my right hand up, you would have your right hand up, right? If I'm, that's matching, right? If I'm mirroring you, though, if I put my right hand up and you put your left hand up, it would be a mirror reflection or a mirror image of me. That's also important as well. So traditionally, when someone is looking to build the deepest level of rapport, then you would match you would match somebody. But if you're wanting to be a little bit more obvious about it, then you would mirror them, because we often see ourselves in a mirror reflection, but we never actually see ourselves as we are, because when you mirror, you automatically flip it. So just keep that in mind. You can do that in a couple of ways. You can do that physically with the way that they stand and their body language and their posture. You can do it even just being aware of their cadence or the speed by which they communicate. So if they're a fast talker, speak faster. If they're a slow talker, slow it down. If they are the sort of person that talks big picture and ideas, you might also talk big picture and ideas. If they're details, you might talk details. If they connect to something that they're deeply passionate about, the easiest way to connect with people is get them to talk about things that they love. So just ask them more questions about that. It's amazing how much you'll love people that ask you questions about yourself, because our favorite topic in the world is ourselves. And then also as well, even deeper things. You can also mirror things like, for example, breath rate. So if they're breathing deep and slow, breathe deep and slow. If they're fast-paced and they're breathing quite, you might also mirror them in that way as well. Again, it's just, think about it almost like as seasoning, right? It's not the whole dish, but these little things add a bit of flavor to the experience, and it's about building that natural relationship. And what you'll find is, if you're present with people, you'll do it anyway without even thinking about it, but you can also do it deliberately, or what we refer to as with volition, which allows you then to build a deeper relationship with people faster. And the sooner you get to a point where it's like, I feel like we've known each other, well then that normally is a good indication that you're heading in the right direction.
How do you go matching people with slow-paced talking, Calvin?
I bully them.
I don't bother. I don't have time. Okay, Pamela Not sure
Hey,
how to
Pamela.
pronounce that, sorry. She said, how do you win an argument? But I might reframe it to, what would be the most effective way to communicate through a disagreement?
I prefer your version,
How do you
Pamela.
win an argument?
How do you win an argument? So, look, there's two things that I want to say when you share that, right? I can give you the easy answer, right? But I can also give you a bigger picture answer as well. I'll give you the easy one first, and then I'll give you the bigger picture one. So, ultimately, if you want to win an argument, and effectively what that means is, let's reframe that language a little bit. If you want to have your point of view come across in the most compelling, most dynamic, most influential way, right, which is the politically correct way of saying I'm a winner and you're a loser, then the way you've got to do that is to control the frame of the communication. So, for example, I'll just try and find something that is political right now. Well, obviously, let's talk about COVID, right? There's a lot of different things that people might talk about with regards to COVID, right? Let's talk about the vaccines, right? If the frame of vaccination is big pharmaceutical is trying to give you a vaccine that hasn't been properly tested, and by the way, I'm not in any way connected to any of this, and I've got no real opinion on any of it, to be fair, because I haven't done my fucking research, but just play with me here. Let's say the frame of reference is big pharmaceutical billionaires are trying to get you to take a vaccine that hasn't been fully tested and might be suspicious. If that's a frame of reference, that's a compelling frame. If the other frame of reference is we want to protect and support the elderly and making sure that we can travel freely and have an open community and open culture to experience and enjoy the world. And in order to do that, you need to make sure you're healthy and you have a vaccination to make sure you can't pass the disease, not to yourself because you'll probably be healthy, but to other people. That's a completely different frame of reference. And so you can understand that you could argue either point of that, but it's about controlling the narrative. It's about framing things particularly to create an emotional connection to the other person. And so oftentimes what happens is you have two people that have two differing perspectives, but really what they're seeing is they're seeing the same thing from a different angle. And I've always loved the analogy of religion like this. They say that religion is a house, but everyone's got we're looking through a different window. So a Buddhist might look through the front windows of the house and say, well, this is what religion looks like. And then a Christian might be looking through the bathroom. And then a Muslim might be looking through the bedroom, right? And it's like just a completely different reference point, but it's the same fucking house. But if you only look through the window, you go, this is what it is. No. No one's seeing the bigger picture. So in order to do that, in order to really win an argument, and not just to very aggressively assert your own opinion, you need to understand all the different dynamics. You need to understand the full picture, right? You shouldn't argue something that you don't know anything about, because otherwise you're just being, for want of a better word, a Karen on social media. With love and respect to all the Karens out there. It's more of a metaphor, Karens, okay? So the idea is number one, understand the full experience, because you can't change the frame for somebody if you don't understand the frame they're talking about. If you can't see the whole house, how can you expect to explain to somebody to say, hey, you're actually just looking through the wrong window? So we've got to understand the full subject matter and really do that. That's number one. Number two is understand how to shift and change the frame. Don't try to get the person to agree with you. Get them to shift their frame of reference. They're looking through things from the same frame of reference as part of that, right? So let's say I was having that argument with somebody that's an anti-vaxxer, that's all about big pharma. It's like, hey, it's nothing to do with big pharmaceuticals, right? And if you wanted to, you would then talk about all the things that big pharma's done for us, right? The improvements in modern medicine, looking at polio vaccinations or measles or mumps or rubella or all of that stuff, that's genuinely saved lives. And then you would talk about, look, do you have an older person in your life? And I make it personal. Do you have an older person in your life? Great. Well, how would you feel if someone that didn't have the vaccine went and saw them and ended up getting them sick and then they died? It was like, well, now that makes it real for them. Now they understand, okay, now I understand why it is, right? Or on the flip side, if you're arguing about the vaccinations, it's like, hey, do you have a young kid? Well, could you imagine giving the vaccination to a child and then having that they turn out with some sort of health complication? Would you risk that in your child? And well, now it's real. And so again, pros and cons on every side, but you get the idea. You got to understand the full picture. You got to understand the person. You got to understand what's going to motivate them to see things from a different perspective. And where's the soft spot? Where's the chink in the armor? Where can I get somebody to see my perspective? I had a financial dealing that had gone astray. Effectively, let's just use that language. And I was trying to renegotiate the deal because people had made deals without my consent, and so I was trying to bring things back to reality. And so the frame of reference I was using was I just want something that's going to be fair and reasonable. right? Now, it's hard to disagree with that frame of reference, right? It's like, I just want something that's fair and reasonable, because then if you disagree with fair and reasonable, you're being unfair and unreasonable, right? So that language is quite powerful in the way you frame it. But it gets to bring back to the point, one, you need to understand the subject matter. Number two, you also got to understand what's going to motivate this person, because if you're trying to convince a specific person, you're going to understand what already motivates them and get them to come on side with you as well. That's quite important. So just consider those things for reference. However, let me give you a bigger perspective here as well. There is a real importance here is to understand why you're actually arguing in the first place. And I remember I had this experience, and I forget even what we're arguing about, hence the importance of this point. But we'd gone away on a family trip. My grandparents, my aunties, my mum, myself, my wife, and the family had gone away. We'd gone down to Margaret River, down south in the Wayne region. Beautiful trip. Anyway, as families do, we thought about something stupid. And there was a discussion around the family and the dinner table. And I always remember this experience. And Mum, if you're listening, I love you. So Mum had said something about at dinner that was completely wrong. I can't remember even what it was about, but it was completely wrong. And my gran, by the way, my gran is a sort of woman where she doesn't believe in fact. Her opinion is fact. Whatever she says is right, because she says it with such certainty that you believe that it is real because she believes it that much. She's a very opinionated, outspoken, strong woman, but she's not necessarily well informed about a lot of things. She's just very clear about her version of reality, right? I'm sure everyone's got a family member like that. Anyway, my mum and my gran clash at times. And so my mum had said something as well that was also outrageous. I can't remember what it was. And I remember telling my mom, basically in the conversation that we had with family, I was like, that's ridiculous, that's stupid, that's not the right thing. You've made that up or whatever. And so in the conversation, I had won the argument, for want of a better word. But what was the collateral damage of winning that argument? Because what's ultimately my end outcome? Do I really give a fuck about the argument that we just had? Because then what happened was Mum then got upset, she got embarrassed, because she thought that I'd put her down in front of the whole family, and she had just said something to be included in the conversation, and I'd actually cut that down saying that's not accurate. So I was right in my fact, but I missed the whole point of the whole thing. The whole point of the whole thing is communication's designed to bring people together, not move people further apart. And so it's like, okay, cool, well done, Calvin. You won the argument with your mum, but why did you even need to win the argument with your mum? Does it really fucking matter what she said anyway? And more importantly, what was the damage done? What did you gain? Did I gain anything emotionally or spiritually by winning that argument? No, but what does it cost me? It's cost me, one, it's created a tear in the relationship with my mum that we had to repair, which we did straight away. It was all good, but it wasn't positive. But more importantly as well, it inflated one person and it deflated the other. So I think that there's a lot of people out there that have low self-confidence and self-worth that try to win arguments or try to win over other people by belittling them to make themselves feel significant. And to be fair, you know what? If you're in that place, fucking do it. Because there's enough people in the world that want to put you down. So it is a nice feeling to feel like, oh, actually, I've got my shit together, or I have some awareness of this, or I'm actually a smart person, or whatever you need to pat yourself on the back. But when you can get to another level of self-confidence where you actually, doesn't really matter. Doesn't matter if I win or lose. In fact, I don't even know why we're having the conversation in the first place. And then you can start to understand that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how young or how old people are. Everyone wants to feel heard, appreciated, understood. So if you can do that for people in a conversation, even when what they're saying is fucking ludicrous, and you know it's ludicrous, well then you go, okay, well what's the best way for me to uplift this person in this moment? And what's the end outcome here? What's ultimately victory? And for me, I realize actually victory for me is not winning in an argument with my mum about something trivial that I can't even remember today. Victory for me is being in a position where my mum feels loved and supported and uplifted and respected in front of the family. And I fucked that up, right? I was so focused on whatever she was saying and me demonstrating how smart I was, I completely missed the bigger fucking point. So just keep that in mind. There's a beautiful line, you can win the battle but lose the war. And I think ultimately as well, a lot of relationships end up where it's one person's trying to make the other person feel wrong and themselves feel right to validate themselves. But if you're a team, you're playing on the same team. It's like you're taking the ball away from somebody that could score a goal just so you can score a goal. Well done for you, but you're going to be a team for yourself eventually. So when Ash and I fight, and we argue all the time about nothing, but when we do, it's always coming back to a place of, hey, I'm sorry for anything I need to be sorry for, and can we be teammates? Because I want my teammate to win. I want my whole team to win. I want my family to win. And so then for me, it's if they win, I win. What a great reflection of you it is to have somebody that has high levels of self-confidence. And if they say something that's stupid, bring it up with them offside. But that gives you a bit of an insight in terms of the answer to the question.
Awesome. Okay. So Veronica has said, I've just started a new job as a manager and don't know anyone.
Good luck.
How do I get the most out of this team, and what are some essential communication skills to lead them?
Ooh, I like this one, Veronica. Okay, so a couple of things. Number one is, as a manager and as now a leader, I think probably one of the biggest things that you can do is lead by example. I don't know what type of work you're in, and I don't know if you're responsible for doing the work or as opposed to just leading and managing a team. And obviously at some point it does get impossible for you to do the work that you get your team to do because just things get too big. But lead by example. There's a natural expectation that the boss or the manager has a different standard or a different expectation, so you can't expect your team to do anything that you wouldn't be willing to do, number one. Number two, even just little things. If you want your team to get there on time, you get on there on time. If you want the team to stay back and work late, you get. I believe we put in our organization a premium on relentless work ethic. So I wouldn't expect my team to do anything I'm not prepared to do myself, or at least haven't done already, just so I've got an awareness of it. That's not always possible, be it the metaphor and the reference point. Number two is also as well. One of the lessons I learned early on in management was actually from somebody that was the franchisee, had set up all of, I think, I can't remember what franchise it was, but he'd set up a ton of franchises. And he said, if you want to manage people, if you see it, call it straight away. So if there's anything that you've got going on in your workplace that you don't like, rather than holding on to it as well, be comfortable being uncomfortable and bring it up straight away, because little things build to big things. And when you don't correct someone on something that you don't like or have that dialogue, then effectively you're promoting it to the rest of the team. That's very important. So just get used to having that conversation as well. And, they're difficult in the beginning, but once you've had the reference point and you're just used to telling people and being direct and not beating around the bush, some people will get a bit pissed about it, but eventually they'll appreciate, respect the fact that you're a direct person, you're having that conversation with them as well. So do that in the nicest way, but, just make sure you're on top of that. I think that's very important. I would also take some time as a leader and as a manager, and it depends on how many people you've got in your team, but I would sit down with each of them one-on-one, and I would ask them a couple of questions about themselves. I would ask them about, hey, what are your goals? What are you looking to accomplish and achieve? What can I do to support you outside of this role? What are some of the things that motivate you? And if I've got feedback for you, how would you like me to give you that feedback? And if I'm wanting to appreciate you, how do I go about appreciating you? The things that should be self-evident, but often we overlook and we don't ask the question around, or oftentimes are big differences. And this is hard to do when you're in the thick of it all. So spending some time at the beginning, just getting clear on what that looks like, is also really, really valuable. By the way, if you've been an experienced manager and never done that, no reason you can't do that at any point in time. Do it at the beginning of the month. It's always a good idea as well. So I think that's important. Another principle or another tip that I encourage you to give as well is to read as many books on leadership and management and people as you possibly can. There's no amount that you can't learn with regards to that. I think that's quite important. I'm actually just looking at a book right now, caught my eye, called The Ride of a Lifetime, which is about the Disney story and about the process that their CEO, I forget his name now actually, Robert Iger, went through the process of building that company. Amazing story, right? But a lot of leadership principles in that as well. There's some fantastic stuff on leadership from so many different authors, and we'll put up a couple of examples in the show notes here for you guys as well. I'm a big fan of a big fan of Robin Sharma's work on leadership. There's also some excellent stuff on influence and communication and motivation by Daniel Pink, for example. There's a lot of good authors. I'll give you a whole list of all my favorite leadership books as well. But I would read vivaciously in that area as much as possible. And I think just simply is having some sort of a very simple but rigorous communication protocol or sequence, right? Cadence in your organization. We do a daily huddle at Wild, so we check in pretty much every day. We don't do it Wednesdays, but we do Mondays to Fridays. We do a little check-in, and just by getting a bit of a temperature check. How are you going? What's going on? What are you working on effectively? Because as you get bigger, you don't have the ability to have depth of oversight. So you want to have little touch points just to see, is this person in the right headspace? Are they in the right mindset? And this is particularly important online. And I would more importantly just be yourself. I think there's a big reference for a lot of people, which is that you get promoted for a certain reason. Now, the challenge for some organizations is they promote you based off your technical competence, not based off your leadership competence. So it's like if you are a great accountant and you then get promoted to a senior accountant role where you have to manage people, just because you are good at being an accountant doesn't mean you have leadership skills. So you always want to be learning about that and improving that. I would really encourage you to do some sort of a coaching or communication program. Of course, we have courses like that, because the more you work on yourself, the more you can help and assist others. I had a call actually with a client who runs 70 staff in Melbourne that are physiotherapists that go out there and do physiotherapy as part of the NDIS system as well. And so she's like, I came and did your self-mastery art of coaching course, which is a 6-week NLP program and a life coaching program. So I did that to be better for my team. Turns out I had some shit to work through as well. And so I would be doing as much of that stuff as you possibly can. I think that makes a big difference.
Cool. All right.
And also as well, another point on that is ask for support from the people that you report to as well. So you want to understand as well, like if they've been in the role previously, you want to have a good mentor in leadership. You want to have a good mentor in your workplace that understands the company and the culture and the politics, that can help navigate you and support you as part of that process. And having sort of like a company hero that you can speak to and work with is always going to be really, really valuable. Or other mentors, professional mentors that are already in leadership roles will be very, very valuable.
Awesome. All right, Jolie, if I've said that right.
Hey, Jolie
has asked, how can I communicate and understand my teenager a bit better?
Fuck. Well, I don't have a teenager, but I have been one at one point. So I think that you're not going to like the answer to this, Jolie, but one of the things that we talk about is that with a team, right? And by the way, you also go through this in your life. There's 4 phases of team development. You've got forming, storming, norming and performing, and then transforming, right? So you've got four stages. First stage is just getting to know people. Effectively, this is the infant stage, right? Then you're going to go through the storming phase, and you have a phase of that, which is normally happens at around 2 years old for kids, right? Where they are now starting to develop their own personality, they're upwardly mobile, and they've got to go through that process. Then it's normally pretty good. Then they go through a whole nother phase, right, around that when they become a teenager, particularly because, for a couple of reasons, from a psychological development stage, 0 to 7 is the imprint phase. They're just absorbing everything you give them. There's not a lot of resistance to new ideas at that point. Some 7 to 14 is when they start to model behaviors. But then around 14, when they hit puberty, when they also go to high school as well, they then go through a socialization phase where they start to hang around with different people. They start to realize, hey, hold on. Mum and Dad said the world was like this for the last 14 years, but now I've got people that say the world's completely fucking different. And so it's not just a clash of hormones and energies and communication styles and all that stuff, but there's also a huge clash of ideologies, right? And ideologies of how do I see the world, who am I, and how do I fit in this world as well? So there's that natural angst that comes from not fully understanding that. And there's also a lot of pressure that we put on young people to figure out what the fuck they're going to do with their lives, right? Understandable. So I think the first thing is to understand that from my perspective, and again, I don't have kids, but from my perspective, I think there's got to be an understanding of 2 things. Number one is there's got to be an understanding that I'm there to walk the path with you as a mentor and as a guide, effectively as your parent. And so there's going to be conversations that I have with you wearing the hat as mom or dad, right? And those conversations have certain expectations and they have certain reference points, and there's a frame of reference, managing the frame of reference, which is that this is what has to happen because you're still a child and you're in my house, and if you're still living here, this is the way that things are. And you don't have to get to the point of, well, I said it the way it is, that's where it is, but we've got to be able to communicate and understand why that happens. There's also going to be another set of conversations as well that is more of as a friend, as a companion on the journey. And there's a great book and a thing called Circle of Security. Chica, what's the languaging for Circle of Security? Bigger, wiser, stronger?
No. Bigger, wiser, stronger, kind.
So I was pretty much right. Thank you for that. So bigger, wiser, stronger, and kind. So effectively, it doesn't matter what age of child development or just in life in general is, you want to try and come across in a way that's bigger, stronger, wiser, and kind. And you come across in those ways, and that's really important. It's about being able to create some boundaries. I think it's also important to understand as well that there's a natural testing of boundaries, which is not actually an act of rebellion against you, but rather an act of understanding boundaries in and of themselves. You know, it's the idea that we push ourselves, and you see this a lot with young adults, right, that have just left university and they push themselves to burnout. And they push themselves to burnout because you actually need to understand where your line of burnout is. It's actually part of the self-awareness journey. So I would try as best you can is to not take things personally, but rather to understand that there's this natural evolution that has to happen, and in some of that there's going to be some collateral damage, and we've got to understand what it means to make wrong decisions and right ones and all that stuff that goes with that as well. But I would try to come across in a way that's bigger, stronger, wiser, and kind. And I would have very sacred time for communication, and I would have an expectation of deep communication, of communication that leads somewhere. But to be fair, if you're trying to do that at 16 years old and you haven't been communicating like that for the first 15 years, good fucking luck. So it starts younger than that, but I think you get what you tolerate. And so if you're not happy with something, then don't tolerate it, and be willing to put in place boundaries and rules and regulations that are perhaps uncomfortable, and deal with the fallout of that, right? It's like, you know, I think from a leadership perspective, this is what comes to me in this moment. I always remember when I first started leading and managing a team, I used to ask a question when we hired people. I said, do you want to be friends or do you want to be better? And I said, I'm more happy. I don't mind if you don't like me. I just want you to respect me. Because I knew that my goal ultimately when I'm employing people is to make them better at their jobs, better at their work, and that means holding them to a higher standard. If they want to be mates, awesome, but I'm not paying you to be my mate. I'm paying you because I want to get the best out of you, so I'm going to have a higher standard for you as well. And if the frame of reference is, hey, this is the standard by which I want for you in your life, and I'm going to make sure that I kick your ass until you get to that standard as well, and you'll thank me for this as well, then that's a good, important frame as part of that as well. And finally, I just read a book on fatherhood, actually just the other day, and there was a line in there by Osher Günsberg. You're familiar with, is it not OG, what was his name?
He was the one on Australia.
Yeah. And he's now runs The Bachelor.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what was his old... Osher? What was his...
Osher, I thought his last name was Gish.
Yeah, it is, Osher Günsberg, but he used to have a name...
That's his name now.
Yeah, but before, what was his name?
Something different.
Anyway, so in that, he's a stepfather, and he was talking about the idea of it's okay for them to ignore you, but you still need to be there so they can ignore you. So it's the idea of there's a lot of kids in the world that don't have anyone to ignore. It's like, it doesn't matter if they listen to you, doesn't matter if they don't. It just matters that that you're there to be ignored.
It's
Andrew G.
Yeah.
So Andy G or Osher says, doesn't matter if they ignore you, doesn't matter if they listen to you. All that matters is that you're there to be listened to or you're there to be ignored. And just remember as well, as difficult it is, and we've got, you know, young people that we work with that you can see going through difficult times, play the long game. You're in it for the long game, right? Don't matter what happens at 16. It matters what's going to happen for them by the time they get to 60. So, you know, just making sure you're building, you know, the best you possibly can with the resources you've got. And don't be too hard on yourself if things are a little bit difficult, because they're going to be.
I love that. Okay. We've got the last one from Ben in our office.
Awesome.
He wants to know...
Well, he's not in our office. He's on holiday right now. Slacking off, bro.
Can you talk about the difference between tactical empathy and cognitive empathy?
Well, see, this is the challenge, right? So Ben goes and listens to these courses and training programs and comes up with specific language, doesn't tell me about it, and then wants me to explain it. I didn't teach you fucking cognitive empathy or tactical empathy. However, having now just heard the terms from the very beginning, let me see if I can try and understand them and then share with you some insights. So tactical empathy implies that it's done as a technique, for want of a better choice of words. Cognitive empathy, I would imagine, is coming from a place of thinking, or coming from a place of maybe more of an intuitive place.
Perspective talking on Google.
Okay.
That's what it is.
That's cognitive empathy or tactical empathy?
Cognitive empathy, also known as perspective talking, is not really what most of us think it is. It's basically being able to put yourself into someone else's place and see their perspective.
Okay.
Cognitive.
Cognitively. Cool. So I think effectively then in that case, I would say that cognitive empathy is you putting yourself in other people's shoes, but doing that perhaps even in the conversation as well. So you might even use language like, okay, let me see if I can see it from your perspective. So my understanding of the situation is this, this, and this is how you feel about that. Am I right? And I'd get validation from people on that place as well. Cognition means or implies that you would think or you would process, and empathy is to obviously be understanding and compassionate and tolerant of that point of view. So that's how I would imagine cognitive empathy is to be. It's more of it's the way you probably talk about it with a friend or a loved one, right? Tactical empathy is more deploying empathy as a tool, tactically for a specific outcome. So if you I think about tactics, I think about it in terms of a mission, which was I'm going to deploy empathy as a resource here to achieve a goal. The goal might be to better understand somebody, but you're probably not. The goal more than likely is going to be to sell somebody, to influence somebody, to persuade somebody, to build a relationship with somebody, to catfish somebody. That's a joke. But you get the idea. That's probably, I'm more using empathy as a utility, and it seems to probably be a little bit more clinical and cerebral.
Maybe we can get Ben on to explain it because he's so smart about
it. Yeah, just be fucking empathetic, bro.
Yeah, awesome.
And think about it. Just think about being empathetic. That's it. Awesome. Well, I hope you got some value. That was quite a wide-ranging dialogue and discussion. If you need anything, let us know, of course. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe on the show, more importantly. And let us know some other topics as well. If you've got things that you want to know about, specific things that even came up on the back end of today, let us know as well. Where do they go if they want to send us through questions?
Ash, what was it? Podcast at wildsuccess.global. Not your phone number.
Good morning, angels. Good morning, Charlie. Podcast at wildsuccess.global. Send us through your questions. You keep asking them. I'll keep answering them. Shout out to Gary V. That's it for me, guys. I hope you guys have an amazing end of 2020. I think we'll get this podcast up and running before the end of the year. Go back and binge watch all of our other stuff as well. If you haven't seen The Queen's Gambit over on Netflix, go and check that out. It's so good. We're off for a couple of weeks. We're going to take some beautiful R&R time with our family. But I just want everyone to understand and know that we are sending you all a heap of love, no matter where you're at in the world, no matter what's going on for you, no matter what 2020 served you up. Let's hope 2021 is a fucking masterpiece. Masterpiece. Anyway, the idea is make sure it's pretty special. Sending you a whole heap of love. Until then, be bold, have fun, make an impact, and we will see you in 2021 on the wild side.